Till the moment of starting, in which case, because
All right, we are live on YouTube.
So we are going to be streaming our conversation on Zoom number 19. So we hope this is the 19th conversation where scholars, practitioners, and archivists get together to discuss some part of their work that is interesting to them and where you can all join in the discussion. So welcome to Conversation on Zoom, or COZ number 19. We have with us tonight, or this morning, depending on where you are, or of course, whatever time, depending on when you're listening to this on YouTube, Gila Flam and Laurie Black. Gila, they will be talking about Holocaust music, Holocaust song, redefining the subject for the 21st century. Now, Gila is a scholar and archivist known widely around the world for her outstanding work. She was born in Haifa. She studied at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, received her BA and MA in musicology and substitute studies in Hebrew literature, Jewish folklore, Jewish modern history, and theater. Her MA thesis was on the musical work of Barucha Zefira, the Eretz Yisrael of the 1930s and 40s, and that was in 1982. Gila continued her studies at the University of California, and that's why you can see a University of California plaque behind her, just to confuse you, because she's actually talking from Jerusalem. Her dissertation was on the songs of the Lodge Ghetto, or Vuj, or however you pronounce it, which was later published under the same title, Singing for Survival, Songs of the Lodge Ghetto, 1940 to 45. And Gila was the founder of Ethnomusicology Archives of the US Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, DC. In 1992, she returned to Israel and has been teaching several colleges and universities, continues to teach at the Jerusalem Academy of Music and Dance. Since 94, she's the director of the music department and the sound archives of the National Library of Israel in Jerusalem, where she's developed the greatest collection of manuscripts and recorded sound of Jewish and Israeli music. The collections have been digitized and are available on the library's site and website. Author of many articles, and she's a consultant to many people and many organizations. Now, Laurie is more of the new guy on the block, and he comes as the Associate Director of the Lowell Milken Fund for American Jewish Music at UCLA at the Herb Alpert School of Music, right? He's a percussionist, a pedagogue, an arts presenter, a Jewish music scholar, and he's found his home in many interesting offshoots in the music world. Deeply rooted in the Los Angeles performance scene, Laurie has performed with various ensembles, including the Santa Monica Symphony, the Jacaranda Music Ensemble, and Torrance Symphony and Chorale. As a freelancer in Los Angeles, he's had the privilege to perform under the baton of many great conductors, including John Williams, Alan Silvestri, David Newman, and James Conlon, as well as recording for various artists. Active in the Jewish community, he's readily found performing in synagogues as a conductor and percussionist, often arranging the works as well. He works in multiple specialities, including music of the French concentration camps, contemporary synagogue music, and klezmer. Laurie holds a Doctor of Music in Sacred Music from USC Thornton School of Music, where he specialized in Jewish music and music of the Holocaust, graduated with multiple honors. Previous degrees include Bachelor of Arts from UCLA and Master of Music in Orchestra and Percussion from USC. So we have two outstanding discussionists, conversationalists, and I'm happy to hand over to Laurie, who will introduce the subject they're going to talk about. Laurie.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you, Geraldine, for making this possible this week and every week. I think we can all agree that this has been a really exciting part of our weeks these days, something that we can always look forward to on Tuesdays. So it's wonderful to have the opportunity to finally talk to our Tuesday mishpucha. And I'm just thrilled to be a part of this particular conversation. Gila's work has been something that has been something I've looked to for methodology, for information, for inspiration. It's certainly something that I dove into as a somewhat recent grad student, and it's just it's a real pleasure to get to explore this topic with her. I'm really excited about the way we're framing this discussion today. We're really going to take a critical look at how we define the idea and genre of Holocaust music in quotes. What does that mean? And also how it relates to Holocaust education and Holocaust music education. And using Gila's incredible background in 30 or 40 years of studying songs from the various ghettos. So I'm thrilled to be able to engage the subject with Gila. So Gila, I'm going to hand it over to you to jump into the presentation. We should unmute. Still muted. There we go.
Okay. So it's nice to see all of you all around the world. I think it's a wonderful thing to have Zoom finally. Although I prefer to meet people in person, but it's still something that we couldn't have done so often. And I wanted just to say that I was really, in a way, not the first one, but one of the early scholars from an ethnomusicological, educational, and professional point of view who addressed the subject of Holocaust song. Coming from UCLA, training in ethnomusicology in my years, it was all contextual, behavioral, anthropological. Why do they sing? What do they sing? Where do they sing? When did they sing? Etc., etc. And I was, in my naive way, thought that I will define what is a Holocaust song back there in the 80s, as I said. And I sort of continued a little bit in the 90s, which now we are 30 years past since then. And I had no clue that this music that I discovered and interviewed people and notated and analyzed and wrote about will have a new life for about 30 years after I finished my dissertation. More than that, looking at other people working on the subject, both Holocaust song, Yiddish song, Holocaust music, klezmer music, I realized that the definition, which was very limited, had become very, very wide. And I'm always asking, does it serve the remembrance and understanding of the Holocaust, or does it do the opposite thing? It makes it acceptable, fun, entertaining, and the Holocaust was only something as if it was First World War or Second World War or an Israeli war or whatever. So I keep sort of from being a little older than Lori, at least. I'm thinking, did I do right or did I do wrong? What should we do? What we can't do? Because when you write music or you notate music, once you do it, it's out of your hands. It's out of control. Everybody can take it and sing it and play it, etc. So in a way, I have no control. So I can go back to my UCLA educational system and be an observant, sometimes a participant observant, and sometimes just an observant. And also what I say to Lori, and I don't know if I'll touch upon it in this lecture, maybe next time, is the different attitudes in Europe, America, and Israel towards Holocaust song and Holocaust music. It's completely, I think, from what I understand and what I see, 3 different repertoires and approaches to the Holocaust. And just a little story again from my very young times, when before I even came to UCLA, I worked for the radio station in the Israeli Kol Israel, which is now also doesn't exist anymore. And I did music programs and music illustrations for programs. And I was asked to put music for a Holocaust Day commemoration for children. And I chose some nice songs that were translated to Hebrew from Vilna Ghetto. And the director said, it's too happy. We want Holocaust music. It means sad. You have to bring cello music or kol nidre or bloch or something like that. So taking this, and again, today, when, not today, but up to the Corona time, many students in Israel in high school, students go to Poland, and on their way to concentration camps and cities and memorial places, they bring music. Most of it has nothing to do with the music that I defined as Holocaust song. So I want to start with some music so you know about what I was referring to Holocaust, and just a little 2 points I want to make. That unlike many of Jewish music that we heard about Nusach and Masoretic accents and Chazonis, and this music after the Holocaust, the people who sang it and created it wanted to forget it. They didn't want to transmit it as oral tradition. So this is a very, very different way of looking at music. Music was at the beginning an expressive form, an emotional form for coping with the situation, for spiritual survival, and as witnessing to what was going on, massacres, deportations, wherever. And after the Holocaust, people wanted to have normal life. Many of them wanted to forget these songs. They wouldn't put asleep a child, a baby, a grandchild with a Holocaust lullaby. So this is one point that is in Holocaust music is very different from other Jewish music. As we know, Jewish music in general is a memorial, is a memory, a memorial, an active act of memorizing culture or voicing culture. And with Holocaust songs, we have to understand that it was not meant to be an oral tradition. Therefore, the sources that we had were very limited. We have 2 great collections, one which was made by Shmerke Kaczerginski, who was from Vilna Ghetto and a partisan, and he published a wonderful book and recordings, and I have his, you can listen to his recordings on our website. He left about, I think, 3 hours of testimonies in singing at the historical committee for Munich, that he conducted his research on folklore, and a wonderful book with 200 lyrics and 100 melodies. And there's a great collection of Ben Stonehill, who recorded in America in 1946, 1948, and Kaczerginski in 1946. So again, it's right after the war. Of course, nobody recorded during the war, which today sometimes it's very difficult to explain even to curators of museums who call me up and say, we want music of children singing in the ghetto. So take a child, take the notes and have him sing. But we don't have a recording of a child singing in the ghetto. So even today, I'm completely shocked that, I don't know, educated people who work with this material are asking questions like that. And so we have Ben Stonehill, Kaczerginski, and here and there, of course, small other anthologies which were published right after the war. So until I came to my research, which was conducted through interviews of survivors. At the beginning, I started with Lodz and later with Vilna. There is a gap, like from 48 or 50 to 80, 82, 83 that I started. There is a gap of recordings or documenting this kind of material. And then in the 90s, which I understand you will have another lecture on that, several programs began to interview survivors with their oral histories. And then in these oral histories, sometimes people sang. I don't think that the interviewers many times emphasized the importance of the songs, because people could say, oh, we sang this and this, and they will let it go. Not emphasize. So what did you sing? Why did you sing? Where did you learn the song? All these UCLA graduate program questions. But we still have these testimonies. And after, I think most of my informants, with the people who I interviewed, died already. I think there's one or two who are still alive in their 90s. And also, as you know, when you record music, the voice must be at least somehow people have to sing the melody and not near the melody, because then we really don't know what they really meant. Not that we are recording singers, but as you get older, the voice is getting bad or not correct, not in pitch and stuff. So so we had very little documents. We had no idea what we want to record. What is the Holocaust song? What are we looking for? Are we looking for new lyrics and new text for original work? Are we looking for parodies? Are we looking for prayers? When I began, I didn't really know. I did many interviews that I even didn't keep because I didn't get anything that I really thought I will get. People will say, we remember things, and then I didn't remember. And memory is also something that you have to take into consideration in every interview, but especially in these circumstances, that people went through a traumatic event. Sometimes they made up stories, sometimes they forgot some details, sometimes they didn't want to remember. So all these psychological aspects are there too. And yet, I think I managed to collect a nice repertoire of songs. And I think I will begin with some examples. And in the examples I'm going to bring you, I'll bring you sometimes the informant, the person I interviewed and recorded, and next to it, the modern interpretation of the same song. And it will be very short. Okay. Okay, I hope it works. Okay. So first, as I said, I'm a contextual. So a map is something that is Holocaust music did not grow up in America or in Israel, usually also not in Hebrew and not in English. It was in local languages and Jewish language, mainly Yiddish, but also in other languages. And if we take Lodge, to see what it goes. Yeah. So when I start with interviewing people, survivors of the Lodge Ghetto, one of the songs that was very catchy and nice was this little song that says, Weil ich bin a Yidale, sing ich mir a Liedale. Because I'm a Jew, I sing a song. Because I'm a Jew, I sing a song. And the lyrics actually talk about even First World War, that when a bomb falls on a place, it doesn't matter if you are rich or poor. It catches who is ever there. So it could be like a humoristic song. We have many, many songs about the poor and the rich in Jewish Yiddish folk song. And this is how the man sang it to me, with a smile on his face, yes?
Weil ich bin neu, sing ich mir das Lied alle. Weil ich bin neu, sing ich mir das Lied. Melchome hat empfangen, nicht Gott für Spekulatie. Jeder haben ungeheuben mit der Spekulatie.
Okay, so he talks about shortage of food, which was the main problem or main suffering in the Lodge Ghetto, and about speculation. And then he says again, he continues with the bomb. When it falls, it doesn't matter if you are rich or poor, if you are hungry or not. And these are I have 3 modern performances that are based on these notations. As I said, once it was out, it was published, everybody could perform it.
Weil ich bin a Yidale, sing ich mir das Liedale. Weil ich bin a Yid, sing ich mir das Lied. Weil ich bin a Yidale, sing ich mir das Liedale. Weil ich bin a Yid.
And another short
Weil ich bin a Yidele, singt sie's mir das Liedele. Weil ich bin a Yidele, singt sie's mir das Lied. Weil ich bin a Yidele, singt sie's mir das Liedele. Weil ich bin a Yidele, singt sie's mir das Lied. Wo me hat empfangen, gar kein Spekulatie. Yidele haben ungeheuben.
Because I am a little Jew, I sing this little song. Because I am a Jew, I sing. Weil ich bin a Yidele, sing ich mir das Liedele. Weil ich bin a Yid, sing ich mir das Lied. Weil ich bin a Yidele, sing ich mir das Liedele. Weil ich bin a Yid, sing ich mir das Lied.
Okay, so the first one was Yaakov Rothenberg, a survivor of the Lodge Ghetto, whom I interviewed, and he actually gave me most of the songs which are in my book, including my book. The second one is Michael Alpert with Brave Old World, from the album that they made and they traveled with for the last, I think, 30 years or 25 years, Song of the Lodge Ghetto. The third one was Eva Kahn from Italy, from Rome. It's called Clay's Roim, and they have also an album called Yankel nel Ghetto, named after the street singer of the Lodge Ghetto who invented these songs. And the fourth one was Adrian Cooper with Zalman Lotek in an album called Ghetto Tango. I will continue with short examples of the most popular song in the Lodz Ghetto, which is named after the head of the Judenrat, of the Beirat of the Lodz Ghetto, Rumkowski Chaim, who is a very, very controversial person until today. And because he was the voice of the ghetto, he was the leader of the ghetto as far as the Jewish inmates felt, this was a song that every survivor from Lodz knew at least the refrain. The song is about death, but in a very black humor. The word death is not mentioned at all. The name of Rumkowski is Chaim. Chaim in Hebrew means life. And it talks about life in the ghetto, about starvation, about hunger, about protectia, about, all kinds of politics that were going on in the ghetto. And then he talks about three Chaims in the ghetto: Chaim Rumkowski, Chaim Weizmann, who was a Zionist leader. I won't play the whole song, but just want to show how many aspects of Jewish history and Jewish politics are in these songs that the inmates expressed themselves during the ghetto. Chaim Weizmann was the leader of Zionism, but the singer was not a Zionist. So it's not a good verse on Chaim Weizmann. He said he took us to Palestine and he dipped us deep in dirt, deep in earth. And the third Chaim, he says the third Chaim, Chaim der Dritter, was the undertaker of the Lodz Ghetto. And he was also a real historical. So between all these Chaims, we have our Chaim. Our Chaim is Chaim Rumkowski. And we wish, it's a wishful thinking, we want to see him, the imagery of talking about Chaim Rumkowski, we want to see him as Moses. We really want to believe that one day we'll be free and Chaim Rumkowski will take us like Moses out of this desert. So I will just play a little bit of Yaakov Rotenberg first.
Mir alasanen gebench mit Chaim, Chaim leolam ufes. Chaim fem beisa Chaim, Rumkowski Chaim mit sein größten Mess. Macht dich nicht immer jeden Tag so gewaltig schreien, oi, oi, oi. Jede eine fragt, a zweite Schale, oi. Sogt der Chaim, es gibt das, oi. Chaim Weizmann hat gesagt,
Okay, I just want you to hear the sound. It's a very Jewish sound. It has this ahavaraba, it has this augmented second, and it could be any kind of folk song created before the war. The words were composed or parodized or contrafact during the ghetto, and this is modern.
Yidalach, kimts in the heils es naye Lied wegen Chaim, Chaim Arichim, Chaim shel Shuloim, Chaim shel Teuve, Chaim shel Bruche, Chaim shel Penuse, Rumkowski Chaim mit seinen größten Ness. Yidallah, son the bench mit Chaim, Chaim li'olam amoves, Chaim fem beisa Chaim, Rumkowski Chaim.
Yidallah seinen gebench mit Chaim, Chaim li'olam amoves, Chaim fem beisa Chaim, Rumkowski Chaim mit sein größen Ness. Macht dem Nisimoi jeden Tag so, Gewalt sie schreien, oi, oi, oi. Jeder einer fragt, hat zweite Scheide, oi. Sogt der Chaim, es geht also, weil unser Chaim, geht ins Kleien, geht ins Gruppen, geht ins Mann. Verzeiht uns Loben, die mit Bergen gegessen man, heimte schon jede Weibermann.
Okay, the Italian group is going into a nice waltz with dancing on stage. And this is the song that really expressed the pain and the hope and the fear of the inmates of the Lodz ghetto.
May I ask a quick question?
Yes.
And if I'm asking a question that you're addressing in a moment, you can tell me. But one of the things, I had never heard that final recording that you just played. And one of the things that was so astonishing to me is, well, first I was immediately thinking to myself, just what is it about this particular tune? I mean, this is a Yankel Hershkovitz song, I think. Yeah, and well, first, why does it still speak to modern musicians the way it does? And more to the point, what I was truly fascinated by how he was kind of messing around with the meaning of the song in the final arrangement. And I'm wondering if you can elaborate on that just a little bit. What they're trying to do with the music to change the meaning or work the meaning for their own purposes.
I think it's the song served also as against saying something negative on what criticizing. And I think in every generation we have things that we criticize, especially our leaders, our teachers, and I think everybody can identify with that. Mm-hmm. And I think he's taking it into like a sort of rock and roll or some kinds of protest song. And
it was crunchy. It really was. It was, there's tension there.
But then he takes it into, the whole song goes into a waltz. Wow. And the singer, the female singer, continues. And I think there is something, you might say, universal. The melody is very interesting and yet very simple. And the topic, I think that there is something that, you as an inhabitant or as a citizen of a place, of a city, especially in a ghetto. But even today, I'm sure you have something to protest or to criticize, and maybe this is what works for you. I can't tell you. I'm not in your generation. I can't tell you.
No, I think you spoke to it beautifully. I really appreciate it.
And this is just a very interesting song, and I will continue if I'll have the time. I will continue again to talk about the melodies of the songs. When they were in the ghetto, they didn't have to define their Jewishness. They could take any melody they wanted and contrafact it and do a parody on that. And this is one of the most, I would say, moving for me songs that survived. Only one verse survived, and it's based on a German march. I couldn't find the original German march, and maybe somebody still can assist me and find it. And it talks about the German Jews who were brought into the Lodz ghetto in 1941 and 42. Lodz ghetto got inhabitants from Central Europe, Germany, Austria, Czechoslovakia, and they really had it very, very difficult to survive because they came from higher standards of living, and they died of disease and hunger just when they got into the Lodz ghetto. And this is a song of Yankel Hershkovitz, or of the representing the Jews of Lodz who were used to lower sanitary condition and lower standard of living, looking at these Yekes. As you know, Yeke is a name for German Jews. I won't go into that. There is only one verse that survived. It says, Es geht a Yeke oi. Also, you probably heard the word oi, and you can read oi is more than a word, it's a whole world. Yeah, it's not even a word, but it it entails so much meaning. Esgeta yeke oi mitateke with a briefcase. Erziach Peter Margarine. And I say it especially for all these Litvaks in the Yiddish that they use, the Polish Yiddish. He's looking for butter and margarine. He can't find it, and he takes a visa noch marishin. And this is in the new title said witnessing. If you don't know what is marishin in the context of Lodz Ghetto, you don't know what it means. You can't understand this song. That's why I was lucky that I had the people who sang it to me, the survivors, that I took it home, I listened to it, says, what does it mean? And then I had to go back to him. I said, what is Marishin? So Marishin is a green area in Lodz, in where the ghetto was, and it had two things. It had orphanage and youth movement organizations that work there, and the graveyard. So he can't survive, so he dies. And this is the only verse that survived of this German, with this German marching tune.
Es geht a jeke, hoi mit a teke, sie Peter Margarin. Beschum Häufen, nicht tut sich häufen, nimmt a Wiese noch Marishin.
Now, Brave Old World made this segment of forever 30 seconds into a whole piece of 7 minutes. And I won't play the whole piece. And in between the pause, and they do the quote, the Ninth Symphony, Ale mentions an embroider, and then they come back to this to comment their commentary on what it meant to be a German Jew, very much involved and part of the German culture. And then in one day, for no reason, he can't survive, he doesn't find his culture, he doesn't find his language, he doesn't find the way to survive in these horrible circumstances. So this is Michael Alpert again.
Es geht a jeke, hoi mit a teke, sie
And then just the end of the song, the transition to the Ninth Symphony. Okay, so in all these examples, I will continue. I showed the witness, the Holocaust survivor who witnessed the situation and sing it to me. My recording, which is actually the researcher understanding, notating and publishing the music or the testimony, and then the representation or presentation, new performance of the same thing in a completely different context. And in addition, with instruments, arrangements, and of course, later, and Brave Old World had succeeded very much in this program with a big audience that buys tickets, that goes to this concert, and I guess enjoys it, which I don't object. Yes, also Okay, and I just want to play 2 songs that I found in Kaczerginski's book, Lieder von Ghettos und Lagern, which was published, as I said, 1948 in Yiddish. And there were 2 songs that nobody paid attention to until I had to edit a concert, produce a concert for the Jewish Museum in New York. And I took Adrian Cooper and other musicians, and later she recorded it. And there are 2 songs about, again, hunger and politics of the Warsaw Ghetto, which I won't go into the politics and history. And just, I want you to listen to the music and think about what I've said before about sad or happy music and the Holocaust.
Money, 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 honey, money is the only thing. If you don't have money, you can kiss your ass goodbye, because money, 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 honey, money is the only thing. Moes, Moes, Moes ist die erste Sache, ja, 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 Moes, Moes, Moes ist die beste Sache. Hast du nicht kein Moes, sie ist zu dir a Klog. Gib mir weg die Bonne und sag da guten Tag, weil Moes, Moes, Moes ist die beste Sache. Now the Jew government here in ghetto land, they oppress us with heavy, heavy taxes. But in return, they kindly give us all the bread and saccharin we can stomach. I tell you, money, 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 honey, money is the root of all things. Die jiddische Gemeine nimmt von uns Danine und gibt uns doch zu essen, Brot mit Sacharine, weil Moes, Moes, Moes ist die beste Sache.
And in the 3rd verse that you see here, that if you don't have money, you go in Pinkert's Kestele Rhein, in the undertaker of the Warsaw Ghetto. We had Chaim Petrikowski in Lodz, and here we have Pinkert's undertaker of Warsaw. And just if I had one, just listen to this also from Warsaw.
Through the streets of Tenzin runs the exhausted coolie Chen Solin, yoked to a rickshaw. In the rickshaw sits an Englishman with his lady at his side. He is white. Chen is yellow with slanted eyes. The white man takes his ease with his lady at his side. Faster, coolie, hurry now, faster, coolie, please. Faster, cries the white man. The coolie runs exhausted, and his poor heart bursts. Through the streets of Tenzin far away runs the coolie, and here in Warsaw, yoked to a 3-wheeled rickshaw, runs the Jew, runs when it's cold, runs when it's hot, tries to run his way out of this. The Jew can be a coolie too. Auf die Gassen von Tenzin läuft Amide Censolin, in a Riksche eingespannt, läuft schneller rum, schneller rum. In a Riksche sitzt der Herr, mit sein Lady sitzt der Saal, weiß ist und Chen ist gell, die Augen gucken krumm, die Augen gucken krumm. Und der Weiße sitzt sich breit, mit sein Lady bei der Seite. Schneller Coolie, eil sich zieh, schneller Coolie, please. Schneller Coolie, please. Schneller schreit der Weiße hoch, Coolie läuft Angst und hat kein Keuch und es platzt das Miede Herz. Bei unserer Censolin, bei unserer Censolin. In der Stadt von Sensin weit, mit de Füße Kohle dreit, a verrückte mit drei Räder. Sieht sich gar a Jid, sieht sich gar a Jid. Dreit Jid mit Flammenfleiß, dreit, wenn kalt es ist und heiß, doch von alle Zorri ständig dreit sich heraus, dreit sich heraus. In der Stadt von Sensin weit, mit die Füße Kohlhydrat, a verrückte mit drei Rädern. Sieht sich gar.
Okay, the reason I gave these two songs, or the last four songs, is to show that the Jews, although they were interned in ghettos, in small places, they couldn't cut them from their cultural roots. They could be, they knew jazz, they knew cabaret, they knew popular Polish music, Russian music, Czech music, German music. So music is on one hand a very strong, expressive way. On the other hand, it could really brought all what we think about cultural life and expression of life. So even this, that's one point. The other point is in all of these songs, there is a conflict between the Jews themselves. And my question was always, once we show that, you know, we were not one. I mean, and it's a strength. I mean, there was Zionist and anti-Zionist. There were religious and anti-religious. There were secular or whatever, more less religious people, and all of them were there interned, and they all kept their identity and expressed it. So now when we this non-unification of the Jews in the ghetto, and when we played, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years after the war, what does people think? How do you present it as a powerful thing, as a normal thing, as a humanistic thing, and not as here they quarrel, here they fight, you know, now on the day of elections. So it's, I just wanted to point it out.
Gila, sorry.
Yeah, one thing, each ghetto also had its own history. I just put in brackets the, you know, Warsaw ghetto is different history, Vilna is different, Lodz is different, and the songs reflect, represent the history of these places. Yes.
A quick question, and again, if you're going to discuss it later, it's totally fine. But one thing, as you were describing, just 70 years later, how, you know, how the context changes, I'm wondering what you have to say about when you take a song like that, Kulim, and turn it into what was truly an art song in that rendition, I would argue. Does that further disconnect it from the context? Does it just create a new context around it? Do you have thoughts about that?
No, I think it is connected very much, because in Warsaw there were cabarets and cafes working during the war, during the ghetto. It was completely part of their lives.
So this is turning it into an art song is an extension of that tradition and experience.
Yes. I don't think it's an art song. It's more a cabaret song. It takes a, you know, pentatonic small Chinese melody. Sure. And it was common, I think, in the area of the 40s in Europe. Okay, I know I'm running out of time and we want a discussion, but I really want to I'll skip this one, but I really want to share with you, I think my last or my latest interview I've made with Alex Tamir. In 2016, we were invited to Universitat Ariel Bashomron. Myself, Tzvi Zemel, who wrote a dissertation, which I have here, and also very interesting about the vocal music in Terezin. He writes about Mendelssohn, Verdi, and Ullmann performed in Terezin Ghetto, the vocal music and its meaning. So we were invited, Tzvi and myself, with Alex Tamir to Ariel. And for my own political reasons, I usually don't go to Ariel, but because I knew I'm going to share a taxi with Alex Tamir, I said I'm going to do that. Sorry for this little political statement. And this is the first time he allowed me that if he wrote the song Stiller, Stiller, quiet, quiet, or silent, silent, in the Vilna ghetto when he was 11 years old, and he won a contest for this melody. And first he wrote it, as he will describe, to Polish words that his father composed, and then Kaczerginski changed the word and described the atrocities, the massacre of Ponar, which is the nearby forest in Vilna, which is the symbol of the massacre of the Vilna ghetto. Like Marishin, we have Ponar for the Jews of Vilna. And here is what he's saying about music in general and about his, and he always says, and this is like witnessing, researching, performing, and he says here, this is what I thought, or this is what I think now. I mean, he himself has past and present in how he describes the creation of the song. And it's in English.
Different angle. First of all, when I wrote this song, I didn't realize what I was doing. I was 11 years old. The actual fact is that my father, who was a surgeon, a physician, an ardent lover of music, who decided probably when I was born that I'm going to be a musician, and he did everything possible that I will get music education up to a certain point. Eventually, in 41, the Jews of Vilna found themselves in the ghetto. There is one correction. Vilna wasn't Lithuania at that time, it was Poland. And I studied in a Jewish school, but in Polish. And I studied music with a pupil of the director of the music conservatory in Vilna. In 41, the ghetto started. My father continued being one of the leaders because doctors were very important. He was part of a circle of artists, educators, let's call them intelligentsia. Sutzkever was one of them. And Shmerke Kaczerginski was a young poet. In Ghetto Vilna, I now realize that there was a way of preservation and spirit of fighting against by keeping up to the utmost culture, activities, studies under abnormal conditions. So I found myself, I studied the piano, now not with a student of the director of the conservatory, but with the director of the conservatory in Ghetto Vilna. I myself don't remember much, but I do remember some things, and now I realize what heroism it was by having in a society which was every day dying by the tens, if not more, from hunger, from diseases, from lack of anything, to have a choir, to have an orchestra, to study, whoever could, not at schools, schools were forbidden, but studying from professors that were now teachers because they were Jewish of children. And there was a competition, a music competition. I didn't even know about it. And one day my father asked me whether I will write a melody to some words that he wrote in Polish. So the first stanza of this 3 stanza song was actually written by my father in Polish. Then Shmerke Kaczerginski translated it to Yiddish, added 2 more, and now I was told that the song won a prize.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Alex Tamir was a very renowned pianist and a teacher at the Jerusalem Music Academy, and he passed away only last year, 2019. He was born 1931, 32. And here is how he looks at it now. For many years, he didn't want to be interviewed. He said, I had a normal life. I came to Israel, I studied, and only this was recorded in 2016, so like 3 years before he passed away. And just a little bit of this song. If I have it somewhere. Okay. Don't know where is my. Okay. If I don't have it, then I skip it. And I would like to close this little presentation because I see I'm almost an hour with a song which again is based on Hans Eisler, German socialistic song, which became a partisan song in Vilna. And also this song, which is called Zu 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And it talks about the fate of the Jews of the Vilna Ghetto and children of the Vilna Ghetto. And in this song, as in most of what I call Holocaust songs, Holocaust Yiddish songs, the end of the song is full of hope. And even in this song, it says, once we were asked to go, we were asked to march to our death, to our destiny. Now we will be asked to march to our freedom, and we will know where we are going. And this is the German one. Sorry, the German one, Drum links 2, 3, and in English is 1, 2, 3. And you can look it up Hans Eisler is also a very interesting story related to the Holocaust. And this is after the war, the performance of one of the singers to an orphanage in post-war.
Wien gesingen Rubina, was hat übergelebt das Wiener Ghetto in etliche Teufellagern. Die singt für die Kinder das populäre Ghetto-Lied 1, 2, 3.
Hat uns das Leben gerufen, das Leben von der Sonne gehört. Hat sich jeder in der Lande so unser gespannt, ich freudig gegangen sein Weg. Zu ein, zwei, drei, zu ein, zwei, drei, in Stoff mit Heumarten gewohnt. Und das Blut am Nacken lang, jeder Welt sein Gesang, wenn du gehst und du weißt noch so gut. Wir haben schon unser Territorium, gebräucht sich alle gewohnt. Dieses Brot aller Schwerte verricht unser Herz und dir gewusst schon.
Okay, I think I'll stop here. What do you say, Lori? Lori is gone.
No, sorry, I was having trouble with my mute button. No, I think this is a great stopping point, and we can start diving into some questions. I know that some questions have been coming through the chat. So maybe, do you want to stop the screen share? There we go. And then, are you guys able to see my my video?
If I see your video?
It's black on my side.
Yes.
That's what you're all seeing?
Mm-hmm.
That's disappointing. All right, I will try to fix that in a moment. But do we want to go ahead and dive into some questions? I think, if I remember correctly, let me pull up my sheet here. I think Alex Klein had a few questions that came into the chat. Alex, would you like to go first? And while you do that, I'm going to reset my camera.
Hi, Gila. Nice to see you. Questions I wrote in the chat to do with the music of the ghetto. What I understood, when the walls went up, the music didn't really change that much because the community lived there and sang the same sort of songs of hope and getting away from the depressive surroundings that they had. It was only the wealthy that could go to the cabarets and to the clubs and escape that way, whether the walls were up or the walls were down. So I understood the music was no different with the walls up and the walls down. Is that correct?
Yes and no, because on the one hand, yes, because they really wanted to continue what was before, with the hope that what was before will also be after, that the music will get them through the disaster. And as you know, in Yiddish, we don't say Shoah and we don't say Holocaust, we say Churban. And this was the hope that we survive the first Churban, the second one, and this is, let's say, the third one, and we'll But at the same time, first of all, we don't know, because as I said, we have very little information. We don't know the soundscape of Lodz, Vilna, or Warsaw during the 40s, during the war, so we don't know. And what they selected was very sort of personal, or depends who and where you sang it. I have songs that people sang for themselves or for their families. The melodies are different. Sometimes they choose Polish melodies or Czech melodies or Italian melodies. Sometimes they had an audience, like what you mentioned about this Yankale. Yankale had to entertain an audience, a hungry audience in the streets of Lodz, because they throw to his hat some food. When they stopped throwing food, he had to take a job in one of the places, the factories in the Lodz ghetto. So, and in the theater, like we see in Vilna, there were professional people writing songs. I mean, Freeling that I didn't play is a professional theater song. Or some of the lullabies from Lodz, Machzudi Egalach, or Nitkan Rozinkes, Nitkan Mangla, they are professional songs composed by professional composers. So I think it depends on the context, coming back to where I began, UCLA, depends on the context and depends on the relationship between the performer and the audience or non-audience. And unfortunately, we don't really know, but definitely some of the songs they couldn't sing. They couldn't sing a lullaby the way they sang it before. Although a lullaby, even in the Yiddish lullaby, usually the mother sings to the child and the father is absent. So it was a good framework for a Holocaust lullaby, because sometimes the father was absent, the mother was absent, and a stranger sang the lullaby. But still they took the melody because they wanted to remember how was it when a real mother in a real house, in a real home, in a real family sang it. So the melody came from a sort of normal life of the Jews, and the lyrics are contradicting the melody. And this gives more of, on one hand, comfort, and the other hand, more meaning to the song. So it's a difficult question we can't answer from a scientific point of view.
No, with the pogroms that were also in the before the Churban and the war, what did anything change from the 1880s, 1860s in Russia and Poland and these other countries where the same destruction happened, but in a different way? It wasn't Nazi Germany, it was local problems, which you see in the film, like Fiddler on the Roof, or portrayed in some of the Yiddish talkies that came to America from Poland before the Second World War. So musically, the expression was always that of hope and a good future, and I don't think that changed at all, whether it's classical or folk, art song or non-art song.
Okay, as an Israeli, I don't know. I was born here, and for sure, I didn't know all these songs. I didn't know the history. I never heard them. We only sang in my generation few songs from Vilna in Hebrew that nobody even mentioned that the original language was Yiddish. My father, who came from Lodz, never knew the partisan hymn or the Holocaust hymn, the Shoah hymn that they sing, because he came from Lodz. He never heard these songs. So it depends where you are, and definitely in Israel, the Holocaust was very much used for political and educational reasons for the new nation. And the whole Yiddish culture was a little bit, I would say, suppressed or neglected. And it took many, many years until, you know, and actually when I was in America studying these Yiddish songs, people looked at me that they didn't trust me because I was an Israeli. So they thought there is some mean reason for my research being an Israeli looking at Yiddish songs. And I know Yiddish, by the way. I know it I spoke Yiddish with my grandparents and partially with my parents. So it's a complex issue, and I don't know how people, and also in America, I know many, I have family in America, they didn't look back to Lodz Ghetto. They wanted to be Americans, they wanted to make it in America, they wanted to learn English. They send their children to schools and they learn the songs that the children learned in school. So I can't answer this. It's a whole different subject of,
I do see that there are a number of questions, so we'll try to get to everybody. But I just going through the chat, I see Marcia Dubrow had a few questions.
Yeah, Gila, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. It was so nice to hear Adrian Cooper. I recognize Michael Alpert's voice, but some of those songs I hadn't heard Adrian sing before, so that was lovely. My main question had to do with your first example. I was wondering, maybe I didn't catch what you said, you may have already said this, but I was wondering whether that example was a song that you thought originated in the ghetto, or that was orally transmitted, because it seems as if that song could very possibly have a long history.
Right. It didn't originate in the ghetto. It was sung in the ghetto.
Mm-hmm.
It was performed in the ghetto, and when you really analyze the words, you can see that it has no mentioning of the ghetto or of events that happened in Lodz.
Right, but it just struck me that it would be interesting to know what the journey of that song was. So do you know had you looked into that at all or not?
I always, when I think I found now other songs of Weil ich bin a Yidele, sing ich mir a Liedele, and I have to compare them, really. I mean, being in the archives, like Geraldine said, sometimes, not wanting, I find things that can match the story of the song, but it's really, again, it's very, very difficult to search the origins of Yiddish songs, which are based on European popular or folk music.
Sure, I was thinking more in terms of the actual melodic construction, less about the words themselves, because the words.
Yeah, I think there are songs like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I will look into that. I'll write to you.
Thank you, Marcia. Malcolm, you have just posted a question in the chat. Do you want to go ahead and read it out loud? Malcolm Miller. All right, I'll go ahead and read it. Hi, Malcolm. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, well, sorry. It was just a bit of amusing. I was just. It's a bit of a long question. I think the main question, Gila, it was very wonderful always to hear your examples. I love the fact that we're actually learning about the songs while you're putting them in context. So my first thing is, to what extent do you think that all the modern performances, at least, is as an aspect of Holocaust education? I mean, they're performing a function in a way as well as entertainment. I was wondering whether how you view the different versions, because the way I hear them, they're fairly political in the way they use the styles. I mean, obviously the Beethoven reference is it's an ironic use of Beethoven's Ninth, which is a very political piece of music, and also transforming something into klezmer. I mean, klezmer itself has a sort of social function which is totally different in its revival to obviously the song in the ghetto. So it's like by transplanting it into that context, you make it entertainment, but they have to avoid that to keep the original authentic voice. So I was just thinking, how do you see the balance of educational and entertainment and political?
I told Lori that usually I'm very critical and I can also be very negative, and I'm trying to avoid to go against my own nature. Personally, I really don't like the klezmer performances of this music. And I had many conversations with Brave Old World. Actually, I think when we met Marsha in Weimar once, or at Leeds, I don't know. I met them in Weimar after many years. And they had their own way of looking at these songs. They say, we want to express ourselves as Jews, American Jews, or American European Jews, through the music of this history. And this is the way we express ourselves. And I say to them, but you know, they had no clarinet, they had no banjo, they had no, you know, instruments when they play this music. So Michael said to me, I'm also, what do you want me to starve myself and feel like the Jews in the ghetto to sing these songs? So I don't know what to tell you. And then there are studies now of the klezmer, new performances, and the new, I would say, context like the Krakow Festival. And they say music is a way to negotiate and to come to terms with the conflicts that were between Jews and non-Jews. And if there is a chance to overcome this terrible history, is the place of music. And I want to be optimistic and not negative. And my own taste doesn't matter at all. I also know that I played back Michael Alpert and Adrian Cooper to survivors of Lodz and Vilna, and they really didn't like it. They said, this is not our music. But you can say it on Beethoven too. I don't know, or on Bach. If you don't play Bach on authentic instruments, you play Bach on a grand piano. Maybe it's not what Bach meant to write.
Yeah, I think it's a very good response. I mean, the fact that you're dealing with the originals, and I think that most people maybe don't encounter that, and so the creativity of these particular artists is, it has to be evaluated in artistic terms, but in order to do that, there has to be a sort of dynamism, and there is a certain critique in what they're doing, which I think you've demonstrated.
Inherently, by doing this to the music, we are decontextualizing it. We are putting it in a completely different light. And I mean, it falls into a much larger discussion about the role of, as you put it, the role of entertainment around this music. I mean, I think to much larger, like truly industrial programs that have grown up around this material, programs like the Defiant Requiem, which is for anyone that doesn't know, is a concert interspersed with actors and video and stuff, or things like Violins of Hope, where it really is bringing the idea of the narrative and aspects of the Holocaust into a popular light, which is, I don't want to, Gila, as you were saying, I don't want to cast pure negativity or pure positivity on it, but it definitely brings up ethical issues, really, in terms of representation.
May I comment?
Sure. Sorry, but Marcia, you just muted yourself after asking if you could.
Sorry.
No problem. Technology.
It's interesting that the descriptive term that's been used is entertainment. I kind of feel that a more generic term would really be interpretation. And I think interpretation leads itself to more nuance and more categories of types of interpretation. For what purpose, to what end? And I think that, so that it's not only a case of when these arrangements, if you will, came into being, and how the context of the time and place informed those arrangements, but also the specific worldview, if you might say that such a thing existed for each of those people, individuals or groups that were coming up with these kinds of arrangements for the text and the music. Because really, I think it's almost unfair to say that they didn't or did, really, we can't know because they didn't know, they didn't have an opportunity to really find out as you did, and were fortunate enough to have the access to what would in most of your examples was the version, the foundational version of a song and a text. So I think it's a complex question, really. I don't think it, as Lori was saying, it's not one way or the other, but I think there's a lot of nuance here. And I think it would be interesting to actually view some of these or analyze some of these songs that you used as examples from the perspective of the situational context that informed those arrangements, by maybe interviewing those people with that perspective. That's it.
I just want to say that I like the word entertainment. I think from an anthropological point of view is the way that you can take things out of yourself and look at it back. It's like some kind of a mirror. It could be an opposite mirror, a direct mirror, a twisted mirror. Entertainment is not just the plain thing that you come to. It really takes you to another world. It takes you to another time. And this was the purpose also in the ghetto. So interpretation is one thing, but entertainment is a positive thing that existed both in the ghettos and camps and also afterwards. I mean, I don't object to, I know it sounds not the right way maybe, but also in Hebrew, it sounds like you come to have fun or you come to enjoy, but not necessarily. You can also, entertainment could also be a tragedy of in theater.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm not criticizing the use of the term. I just think that again, its usage in place. Entertainment is generally thought of, I think, I don't know what does everybody else think? I think that the term entertainment is generally used in a context to,
enjoy.
Enjoy. It's the messaging issue, because clearly these interpretations have an overlay of a messaging intentionality. And I think that, we have to really pull it apart to see if there was a message, like as Malcolm said, in his note, the usage of irony in the choice of musical arrangement, I think contributes to that. So thank you, Gila.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I would just throw out there, just because that aspect of the conversation truly fascinates me, that we haven't even mentioned that the important, while entertainment in and of its, this issue of, is it entertainment? Is it, where does it fall and how do we interact with it? But it's also the first point of entry for most people to this repertoire. And so that role in and of itself is a very important one to consider. Sorry, I think did I hear somebody else jump in, or?
I wanted to jump in. May I?
Oh, please do.
Yeah, I just saw streaming, as most performances are these days, a performance of Der Kaiser von Atlantis by Victor Ullmann, which you probably all know was composed in Theresienstadt. It was fabulous. Now, it had sets that were so imaginative. Of course, this couldn't have been done in the ghetto, in Theresienstadt. And the voices were wonderful. The instrumentation was wonderful. And I'm sure the instrumentation was not exactly as Victor Ullmann prescribed it, but it was accessible. And this is what we're talking about, of making things accessible.
That's I told Lori that's another conversation on Zoom on art music and on the music of Terezin. It should be separated from this lecture. That's why I didn't mention it. I just mentioned the
yeah, but
recent
it's
work
just an
by
example of
Sure.
But of course, but it was written as an opera by professional people. In the case of Atlantis, so it's a little different because I mixed some songs which were very folk songs, popular songs, and like I say, art songs. I agree with you completely, but it's really it's a beautiful piece that stands by itself. Also, the case of Atlantis.
Thank you so much, Isabel.
Thank you. Thank you, Gila.
Are there any other questions? I'm looking in the chat. I do see that there was a follow-up question from Lucy I think it was to Marcia. Lucy, did you want to ask that real quick?
Eli Schleifer wanted to say something.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see it.
So I have to listen to him.
No, of course, Eli, please. I didn't see that.
Hello. First of all, thank you, Gila, for a very important presentation. And of course, much more than there is in this presentation is there in your book. And I highly recommend that people read the book and in order to understand more deeply what you were saying in this lecture. I have a comment and a question. My comment is this. In 1991, I visited Vilna in the framework of the first so-called European Jewish Music Conference, which the late Yosef Dorfman organized. Isabel was also there, so she may remember. At that time, I visited the Holocaust Museum at Vilna. It was just the beginning of something, and it was handled by Rachel Margolis. And Rachel Margolis said, "You're coming from Jerusalem, please give my regards to Alex Volkovitsky, Alex Tamir. I was friends with his father. So I came back to Jerusalem and I saw Alex and I gave him these regards and he was very angry. And he shouted at me and he said, "This time is to be forgotten. I don't want to do anything. I want to have anything to do with it." I said, "But look, it's the song that you wrote, it's very important. Forget it. I don't want to do anything with it." And for a number of years, whenever I reminded him of that, he would be very, very angry about that. But in his later years, this attitude changed, as you witnessed in this conversation that he had at Ariel University. I'm very grateful to you, Gila, that you brought it. Very important. Now my question, as of course a researcher of Chazanut, I would like to know, and I don't see much of it in your book, and that is how much usage of Chazanut and Nusach were there in songs of various ghettos, because this was part and parcel of their life.
I think in the folk songs of like the broader singers like Yankale, there is some echoes of Chazanut and Nusach, and but in the theater songs, I think it's more connected to the general Eastern European popular music.
but
And
not to
only
Chazanut,
the- What? Not to Chazanut.
and not to Nusach.
Not to. But you know, it's in minor key, sometimes augmented second, you know, but it's part of the Yiddish song too. So if we want to compare the whole repertoire of Yiddish song, then
No, this is a different story. Yeah,
it's a different story.
yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I do see Alex Knapp has been waiting so incredibly patiently. Alex, do you want to go ahead and jump in?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much indeed, Gila. Very, very interesting and very illuminating. I just wanted to mention this collection of songs composed by Professor Johannes Spector, who's much better known, obviously, over the years, going back decades now, as an ethnomusicologist, you know, whose professor was Eric Werner, and all, you know, who comes from a long,
we
long
have
line.
a collection. We have a
Pardon?
collection at the National Library.
You do. And so I just wanted to point out how interesting it is that somebody who is so steeped in Mizrahi music and all sorts of areas of Jewish music that were at the time regarded as really quite abstruse and very hardly known, but she put them on the map. She was also very accomplished as a Western classical musician. Her training was as a concert pianist, Western classical music, as indeed was her late husband. He also was a classical musician. He also perished, he perished in the Holocaust, where she survived. And the music, as I recall, from this particular collection of Johannes Spector is very remarkably Western. In other words, with accompaniments that are very much in the tradition of Western, well, shall we say, popular music. And it's really rather curious to juxtapose one side of Johannes Spector's work with her other talents as well, which are much less known. I just wanted to know if her collection is often looked at, whether her music is well known as a her compositions, Holocaust compositions, are well known to people who are specializing in this field.
Unfortunately not, but her recordings that she made in Israel are in the National Library Sound Archive, and just recently, or just actually as we speak, one of my colleagues is cataloging the recordings that she left behind it, JTS, and we digitized it, and now we catalog it. So her recording collection is complete at the National Library. This music, I know it very well, but you know, it says nothing. I mean, not about her talent or about the songs. As I say, in Israel, people don't look for Yiddish songs of the Holocaust. So
okay,
they sing Yuda Poliker, Chava Alberstein, Shlomo Arzi, they sing all kinds of songs. But thank you for this. It's nice to remember Johanna also as a Holocaust survivor and as a composer of Yiddish songs and collector.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Judith, I see you have a question.
Judith? Which Judith?
Do we still have Judith? There. Hi, Judith.
Cohn.
Judith Pinella, sorry.
Oh, okay. No, I just made a comment that, you know, about the presentation or interpretive nature of some of the musical performances of the music, and that I was familiar with most of them, being familiar with the groups and the performers. And in a way, I think that a lot of people, for a lot of people, these performances are their first or only exposure to this music. And the second part is that I think about the fact that it's somewhat out of context. I agree that if you have a piece or track of music on a
on an album or online. It's out of context. And yet there's so many young people today, certainly here in the United States, maybe not in Israel where there's more focus on it, but in the United States, so few people really know about the Holocaust today. It's really a growing percentage that don't know very much. And this more popular music in a lot of ways is crossover music in the United States to a broader audience, not just a Jewish audience. And so in that regard, it serves a function and a purpose. And that was just my comment, that it is an educational as well as an entertainment mode in a very large way, because it's sometimes the only exposure people have to having any kind of connection to authentic materials that are being brought to a public forum.
Yeah, I agree. I just, if I may close this meeting, Lori, is that we ethnomusicologists always laughed about our
Yep,
profession.
I think.
What I'm saying, we ethnomusicologists, we can go so far, but then the rest of the way is done by others, which I think is wonderful. I don't think other professions can enjoy that. And I think the more we live, the more we see where music goes, because once, as I said, it's out of our desk, it's not ours anymore. And to begin with, by the way, if nobody asks about copyright, I don't have any copyrights on this music. That's why everybody can perform it. Because in my book, I say that I didn't compose it, I just collected it. And as you mentioned, some of the melodies, I don't know who composed it, when it was composed. So actually it's free material as far as copyright, and everybody can take it and do whatever he wants to. And we just have to live long and healthy and observe what others are doing with our scholarly work that we enjoy doing, I think.
I really appreciate your work very much, and I appreciated this presentation. Thank you.
Amen.
You know, Judy, I think that your point is well taken, and
Thank you, Judith.
I'm sorry. May I speak?
Sorry, what was that, Marcia?
Oh, I was just responding to Judy's.
Oh, totally. I think I'm a bit more delayed than everybody right now.
Okay, no problem. No, it's very interesting because the way you first posited in the chat, your concern really was emphasizing the issue of Holocaust education. And I love the whole idea of educating, especially young people, through the arts and, you know, the art of the Holocaust and all the very interesting various media in which, you know, artists in the camps, especially Terezin, were able to express themselves that way. And with respect to the music that you presented today, Gila, I think that in many ways, the onus or the responsibility is really on everyone who came after, and every generation who's doing any kind of educating, if you will, to maybe take it upon themselves to communicate to the people who are expressly delivering either entertainment, or in many schools across the country, Holocaust education is mandated for both, as Judy pointed out, Jews and non-Jews alike. I think that, you know, the two can go together. They're not mutually exclusive. And I think if there is a kind of moment, maybe not dwelling on it, but a moment of, you know, explaining that these are interpretations and that this isn't how the music sounded at the time that they were sung in the ghetto. I mean, it takes a few minutes to just make that point. I think it's an important one.
Thank you, Marcia. I think we have one more question. Agnes Corey, you've been very patient. Please go ahead and jump in.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And I may be off in a second because the internet keeps throwing me off. Brilliant presentation. Thank you so much. I was just wondering whether you think or don't think that there is a very thin line between Holocaust education and Holocaust industry. And where do we draw the line?
I leave the question open. I'm not going to answer that.
Okay.
I'm an ethnomusicologist. It's a very deep question. It's beyond the scope of this lecture, I guess.
Because I am worried about it a bit. But anyway, thank you very much.
I can tell you for...
Yeah?
I'll say in the circles of arts presenters, it's something that is readily discussed because you can't hear me at all?
No, it's okay.
I can hear you, yeah.
Can you all hear me? Okay, sorry. In arts presenter circles, it's an issue that gets raised all the time because on the one hand, arts presenters know that you can get an audience with a Holocaust-related program. You can sell tickets for a Holocaust-related program and not have a problem. The Jewish community will come out for it. But then it becomes, an ethical question as to, well, how is it being represented? So on the performer side of it, on the presenter side of it, we're talking about this all the time, but with no resolution.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. And thank you for the brilliant presentation, Gila.
Thank you.
Gila, this feels like we've come to a good point to wrap everything up. So I'll just say for me and for us on our side, this has just been a wonderful pleasure to do this presentation and have such a wonderful, lively discussion about this. So, Gila, I just want to thank you 1,000 times for your work on this, and it's just so wonderful to hear you speak about this material.
And I hope one day you come to Jerusalem and I come back to you.
Oh, and Geraldine, of course, thank you for all of your hard work putting this together.
Thank you.
I can't wait.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you all.
Bye all.
Before we officially conclude, I think Geraldine wanted to tell us about upcoming